In the previous video, we read about how Philip Agre tells us the importance of communication through internet, how internet can be useful as a means of communication in being productive and providing great service to the clients in their work, in their day-to-day lives, and how life can be easier for the companies as well as the clients. Through the example of Julian Orr's study of the technicians of the photocopier company. Let's read further. Social networks also influence the adoption of new technologies. If the members of a community already have social connections to one another, then they are more likely to benefit from technological connections. Every culture has its own distinctive practices for creating and maintaining social networks, and a society will be healthier in political and economic terms when these practices are functioning well. For example, it has long been a mystery why the people of Sarajevo have maintained their tolerant, pluralistic culture as terrible wars rage around them. A visit to the city, however, makes one reason entirely obvious. Sarajevo is organized around a pedestrian mall about 2 kilometers long, and the people entertain themselves by walking the length of this mall, meeting their acquaintances, and stopping for coffee. Social connections are thus continually renewed, and people are led naturally to introduce their friends to one another. Here again, with one more example, Philip Agre tells us the importance of communication. He tells us a beautiful story about the tiny city called Sarajevo. Though surrounded by wars from all sides, is able to maintain peace and harmony through its socializing quality, how people are constantly connected to each other through their long walks along the length of the huge mall. This social connection keeps them emotionally healthy and hence at harmony with themselves and the environment around them. To take another example, Hungary remained a relatively healthy society during the Soviet occupation, largely because of its well-developed social networks, based on a tradition of close, lifelong relationships among the members of each gymnasium class. The social networks of Silicon Valley, by contrast, depend on workplace connections. People frequently move to new jobs, but they assiduously maintain their relationships with their previous co-workers, even when those co-workers get new jobs themselves, so that they will have people to call the next time they are looking for work. Philip Agre further gives more examples of effective communication. It is fundamental to existence and survival of humans. With the example of Hungary, he says communication improves relationships and nurtures mutual respect, as had happened in the case of Sarajevo. It is a process of creating and sharing ideas, information, views, facts, feelings, etc. among the people to reach a common understanding. He then tells us how employees strong and effective communication helps them in maintaining strong and lasting working relationships at all levels of organization, even when they go to work in different places and different companies. This helps in leading to increase productivity, output, and their morale in general. As these examples illustrate, the practices of social networking vary considerably, and each practice is knitted into the large workings of the society. Authoritarian societies will attempt to suppress the cultural practices of networking, and democratic societies will promote them. Broad implementation of the internet is one way to promote social networking, and the existing practices of networking can offer clues to the most effective ways of implementing the internet. Of course, much of the spread of the internet is spontaneous, so long as the telephone system works reasonably well. Internet service providers can spring up to offer internet service to anyone who wants it. In an affluent society with strong social networks, this might be enough. The term authoritarian regime, in its broadest sense, encompasses all forms of undemocratic rule. Compared to democracies, an authoritarian does not maintain the institutions and procedures of participation and political competition, fundamental rights, and control of power characteristic of a democracy, and thus does not possess democratic legitimacy. In a more narrow sense of the term, an authoritarian regime represents a specific form of autocratic rule which has been specially distinguished from totalitarian regimes. Biologists used mathematical models to show that societies that favor generalists who have a wide range of skills are less well connected than those societies that favor specialists who are highly skilled at a smaller number of traits. The findings have implications for improving information flow and problem solving in settings from business to academia. The digital age, and especially internet, fundamentally transforms the domain of creation and all its dimensions: artistic, social, and economic. These transformations are accompanied by opportunities and risks for the diversity of cultural expressions, whether we consider the issue of fully benefiting from opportunities inherent to the digital age or the capacity of actors to face the challenges it brings at the national and international levels in the cultural domain. But when resources are more limited or the cultural practices of networking have been weakened by a history of authoritarianism, state policies have some hope of promoting internet use. The most obvious policy, simply plugging everybody in, is far too expensive and does not address the social and cultural issues. It is much better, not to mention cheaper, to take a modest targeted approach. Building on experience in the United States and the analysis I have developed above, let me offer 10 conclusions that might guide a country's development of a culturally appropriate network policy. In this paragraph, Philip Agre discusses the challenges and the opportunities the internet offers. Opportunities linked to the digital revolution and the deployment of broadband internet networks are numerous. Yet, public policies and international cooperation must play a major role for these opportunities to lead to significant real gains for the diversity of cultural expressions. The potential is enormous, but strategies must be implemented to unleash it. There are problems with regards to the financing and monetization of online cultural content and their impact. It is urgent to adapt and adjust to the digital age and to develop strategies aiming towards a networked culture. It is necessary to develop a proactive strategy for a networked culture that would recognize and reaffirm its leadership within the larger cultural governance in the digital age.